Wonder Doctor for our second live stream of the day.
I'm Dr. David Rosensweet.
And I'm Joshua Rosensweet. And today we're going to talk about the concept of desperately seeking and yearning for and needing to find that extra special person in our life.
Our soulmate, so to speak.
Yeah.
And boy, do I know this one from the inside, because when I was about 12, my whole life changed as I started discovering there was these people called girls.
I inherited this gene.
Did you?
I can remember being in Nepal on a rooftop of a building at 11, looking at the stars, and 11 going, please send me my mate.
Yeah. And one thing I noticed about what I was experiencing with girls all of a sudden was this was the best thing on earth. It sounded like there were other good things, playing sports and nature and stuff like that, and becoming a doctor because I was already tuning into that. But there was nothing in the world like girls. And that's natural, and that's fine, and that's beautiful. And of course, it's not gender specific. It's just as legitimate for same gender. The yearning is the same.
Yeah.
It's for a deep connection. But what we thought about addressing today was going over the top and placing too much emphasis on the search, on the seeking, on the yearning. And when you do that, you can make some errors. It's part of a natural process, but in so many of us, and I certainly was one of these folks, I became obsessed with it. And I want us to look carefully, as I have over the course of my lifetime, why did I become obsessed? Why wasn't it just a natural part of a good life? And you know, everybody knew at the time that, you know, don't go desperately seeking anybody. Have a good life. Enjoy your life. Become strong within your life. And that'll give you the best chance of attracting the right person, and the two of you being two independent, healthy people, that's going to be the best thing you can do. So I'm not talking about that natural process. I'm talking when I went over the top. Why was that going on? Because the more awake I became to what was going on in my own being, the more empty I felt, lonely I felt. Now, I wasn't conscious of this at the time, but these drives, this hunger for soulmate, soulmate, soulmate had other factors in there other than the natural factor. The natural factors, and it was just an emptiness, a loneliness, a lack of knowing and being a mate to myself, a good friend to myself. I had identified what out there in the world of everything was the most pleasurable, and I was trying to use the visions of that, the imagination, the dreams, the yearning for that, to be the medicine that was going to take care of, the best medicine of all to take care of, the emptiness, loneliness, and meaninglessness that I was actually feeling, the fear, the sadness, and anger. I wasn't conscious of this at the time. My life helped me discover that over time. But at the time, I was just feeling the yearning. And it wasn't like I wasn't leading a good life. I was just a regular guy growing up in a nice family and a mom and dad who loved each other. And so it's when someone goes over the top and they're basing so much of their desire and their thoughts and their imagination and their attention to, I gotta find my soulmate, I gotta find my soulmate. What's not going right there? For one thing, and I've already hinted at it, they're getting uncomfortable feelings called emptiness, loneliness, meaninglessness, fear, sadness, anger, shame. Shame is the feeling there's something wrong with me. Guilt, what I do is wrong. Those kind of feelings are taking place inside of them for very good reasons. We all come to earth with those uncomfortable feelings. Those coupled with thoughts would be, what's wrong with here? What do I need? How can I antidote this? How can I remedy this? This is not okay to have these emptiness, loneliness feelings of not being connected. What am I going to do about this? Well, let me choose the very best thing out there. How about food? Yeah, I'm going to overeat. How about sweets? I'm down, I'm gonna get me up. How about alcohol? How about drugs? How about street drugs? Anything to ameliorate, to medicate the uncomfortable feelings. And then the best one of all. How about my vision, my imagination of connecting up with the perfect person who's going to fulfill every need that I've ever had? They're going to fill this. And so many people go into a relationship with those kind of criteria, and they meet this beautiful person, they see the beauty, the first phases of the relationships are just sparkling because they see the beauty, but sooner or later life sets in, and their partner has their uncomfortable moments, their uncomfortable days, the feedback that they want to give to their partner, but I didn't like how you did that.
I would go so far as to say even the most perfect person in the world can't ever fill that hole. It's an unfillable hole.
Exactly.
And you can't jam anything, including perfect love, in that hole. And somehow I will be whole if I find it outside myself like that.
Absolutely. And then add to that we're human beings.
Yeah.
We're not perfect. Yes, we all have beauty and strength and courage. And the closer you look, the more amazing we all are. But we're unfinished, all of us. We've got unresolved feelings of fear, sadness, anger, shame, guilt, emptiness, loneliness, meanness. All of us are carrying this. Unbeneficial thoughts, insecurities and stuff. So no one can be perfect all the time. We're partially on earth to move from our imperfections to learn more and more and more and get better and better at loving ourselves, loving each other, and creating a great world and a great life. We're all a work in progress. So if you go into a relationship and in the fantasy part of the relationship where you're seeing the beauty and that's all you want to see, go, this is perfect, this is my perfect mate.
Yeah.
And then the minute the person that you're attracted to blinks wrong or says it doesn't look good one morning or they're scared, and you look, and I've done this, and you look at them and go, they don't look so pretty today. Now, they're not talking very nice to me. Now, my soulmate, my true soulmate, would always look beautiful and would always talk nice to me and have unconditional love every second for me. These aren't conscious thoughts, but this is how people are behaving. Or shall I say, this is how I was behaving in my 20s, 30s, and beyond. And so relationships that start off so sparkling for very good reasons, they can start to diminish and deteriorate. I didn't like how you talked to me like that. If you were really my mate, you'd be beautiful to me and wonderful to me every second. And these relationships can deteriorate, diminish molecule by molecule by molecule. And 5 years later, you can wonder, how in the heck did I ever get married? What's the antidote to this? That's the short version. The antidote is somewhere along the line we become conscious and aware of our own internal discomfort. We've been beating this drum. We're not the only ones. And you learn how to recognize your own discomfort. And you learn to recognize your own imperfections. And you learn how to give yourself in a moment of fear, sadness, anger, shame, guilt. You learn how to accept yourself in that moment.
One of my dearest friends right now, dear, dear man, is going through a divorce. And he's a very responsible man. He's owning what he did and why he arrived here. And I just love talking to him. It's painful. We talk every week because he's in it and there's no easy way out. And he's gonna feel it for a long time here because he knows how to love deeply, and he really did. But one of the things that as soon as this happened, as soon as it really started to collapse, and he started to collapse, he got himself...
His marriage started to collapse?
Yeah, as soon as his marriage started to collapse, and he started to personally collapse in the middle of it, he got himself off to all sorts of different therapies and groups. And the one that he wanted to talk to me about a couple of weeks ago was love addiction.
Yeah.
And he realized that, just like you spoke about in the beginning, that we seek something out there, and there's lots of treasures. There's the fanciest motorcycle, or the biggest house, or the best chocolate. But the king for a lot of us, you and me and Andre, was love. And so he really desperately sought it and sought it and sought it. And it was an addiction. was like any other addiction. And so the group he now attends.
Addiction meaning instead of being consciously aware of what's actually going on in yourself, you unconsciously strive to medicate it, to ameliorate it, because it's uncomfortable with food, with women, or with men, or with relationship, or a big car, or busyness, work addiction, anything anyone does in any given moment to avoid the truth of the moment. The truth they want to avoid is their own emptiness, meaninglessness, hopelessness, etc. in the moment.
Here's another one I've seen, and I'm actually going to use a slightly odd story because it's not completely related, but it's always ranked so true for me. When I was in college, I worked at a hotel, and I worked with a young man, and so we talked all the time. And what he would do, like clockwork, is come to me with something that was going to do it for him. And he'd show me the pictures of the latest bicycle and why it had exactly the right sprocket and why the carbon fiber this and that. And he'd dream about it over and over and over and save his money and buy it and love it for about a week.
That's right.
And it repeated, and it repeated, and it repeated, and it was so obvious that all these years later it still stands out to me. Why? Because I saw it as a reflection of a part of myself that can do this. And this is a pattern that I think people often do with relationship, and we actually put it in our thing, we're being told to read our own list here, which is, what do? We desperately seek a mate. We find someone that seems to fit the bill. We fall out of love, and we repeat it over and over again.
Go on to the next supposed mate.
Yeah.
Because, and I again want us to return to mating is natural.
Yeah.
Intimate relationship, intimate sexual relationship is a very natural and amazing, amazing possibility. We're not talking about that. That can take place.
Yeah.
We're talking when someone takes one of the biggest miracles that can happen to many of us on earth, not all of us. We're not all destined to have this be why we're on earth. But for many of us, is we take the big thing and we distort it, and we get into trouble with it. And people make wrong choices about who the ideal companion is and what are the qualities that makes that. And they get into relationships and they have children, and then they discover they're not using the right criteria. Now there's a certain percentage of people, and you and Jen, for example, are just one of those miracle exceptions for reasons that I've thought. You met each other when you were young, your grandfather and grandmother, my mother and father. They met each other when they were young, they fell in love, and they succeeded. Them for over 70 years.
Yeah.
And you and Jen for 29?
30. Known each other 30.
That happens, and I have a lot of theories why it did work for you and Jen. So I'm not talking about that. We all want that. I'm talking about when someone starts not making the right choices, seeking the mate a little too much, trying to get the mate to fulfill undeveloped and unhealed qualities in our own self. You cross a line, and mating doesn't become the natural thing that it is. It becomes this ground for trying to work out uncomfortable feelings, and they'll bounce back and forth between each other, and they'll diminish the relationship. Many people who connected up with one another, and they could have made it, they were right when they saw each other and they fell in love, and it could succeed. It turns out it didn't. It deteriorated because they hadn't healed the various things that make a relationship really make it over time. As you've said many times, the key is best friendship, and also there's a key to you and Jen of the maturity, the natural maturity.
And I hold one of the keys to be, and this is definitely a repeat, but this is the theme of my life, that to be loving is the most important thing I can do in life, and most pleasurable for me. I can go into a relationship day after day and really hope they love me enough, and look for the signs that they're loving me enough, and want that. Oh, if they'll just love me enough, I'll be enough.
And get mad if they don't love you enough.
Exactly, or not love me in the way that I want in that particular moment, because I predetermined what the correct form of love would be.
Empty, dark hole.
Yeah. And being loved is precious. I don't want to say that it's not. But what really does it, day after day, is how loving can I be?
Yes, exactly.
And it's not a martyr thing, and it works. Right. I think also because I'm married to a woman who reciprocates that.
That's right.
She enters relationship saying, how loving can I be? How honest can I be? How committed can I be? So I get to rest in this amazing relationship where my wife shows up and shows up and shows up again for me. But my part
Yes.
is to show up and show up and show up for her and fill her bank account and fill it. And you know, that is sustainable. I can sustain that kind of love forever because that's mine to do. That's an action I'm taking. I am being loving, and I can do
Right.
that any day and every day. Any day I can show up for it.
And that's the paradox.
Yeah.
We all think that if someone loves me enough, that's going to fill that hole.
Yeah.
And that was a shock for me as I was growing up because that's what I was looking for. I wanted someone to love me enough to make up for all the inadequacies that I had. I didn't know that, but that's what I was doing. And then over the course of my lifetime, I discovered this phenomenal paradox that what was truly rewarding for me was when I was loving. I'm feeling the love for somebody. I'm doing a loving act. That was deeply rewarding. I'm so glad that we, once again, when you brought this up, we're arriving there. And then to go back to the mistake that you can make if you're out there seeking the love, for just as a sneak preview, no one can love you enough to make up for fear that you haven't dealt with yourself, for anger, for emptiness, for loneliness. Someone could love you unlike you've ever been loved, ever could imagine being loved. It won't do it for you.
No one can, if your whole is that you're not beautiful enough, or
Yeah.
you're not smart enough, or you're not anything enough. I think part of the other illusion, at least one I had, was because I didn't think I was physically beautiful enough. And I thought, finally, if some beautiful woman thinks I'm handsome,
Right.
then I'll know that I'm handsome.
Right. And it never works.
It doesn't work.
And it does, and you know what? Many women have brought to relationship, and many men have brought to relationship that level of appreciation of beauty and that amount of caring and that amount of love. And the shock to many of them is their love isn't working. They're not able to affect the emptiness, the loneliness, the meaninglessness in their partner. And many women, it's just not confined to women, have this delusion that, and have this theory that if I'm loving enough, they will heal. It's not a gender-specific thing, but I've observed this in many of my women patients, and not enough of them. And so what's the medicine? It's to, somewhere along the line in this lifetime, to become aware of your own uncomfortable feelings. Because they're the ones, if you don't attend to them, are going to generate the hunger for drugs or medicines or sex or work or whatever you're going to try and medicate those uncomfortable feelings. So the bottom line is, get really skillful of recognizing, become aware of and feeling your own uncomfortable feelings. And when you take that project on, you're going to be a little surprised. Because if you're paying very close attention to your own internal emotions, you're going to see there's a lot of uncomfortable feelings. Some vague ones, some strong ones, some anxiety, which is vague, which opens up into fear or emptiness or loneliness. And develop the next skill. Once you identify those feelings, you feel them. And actually the kind of identification I'm talking about is, yes, you can use your mind to go, look at this, I feel scared. The mind can be helpful. But the kind of identification I'm really talking about is your ability to identify them emotionally, which means you feel them. I feel fear. I feel emptiness. I feel anger. So you're getting to know yourself. Well, the truth about what's going on in you. Not all the time. We're all beautiful. We're all amazing. But this stuff is going on as part of being a human being. And then the next thing you do is you bring the only medicine that'll ever work for this uncomfortable feelings is unconditional love. And the aspect of unconditional love that you bring to your very own self, no one will be able to love you out of this one, is you bring unconditional love to your own self. Oh, where did the concept of self-love come from? Well, this is the detail. And an act of love to your own self is called acceptance. So if you're feeling afraid, or if you're feeling empty, or you're feeling lonely, the medicine is you accept it. which means you allow those uncomfortable feelings to be exactly what they are. You don't say, oh, I feel fear. Well, I'm going to think positive thoughts and get rid of this fear. I'm going to heal this fear. No, nothing like that. That's not acceptance. That's saying, I'll be good when I get rid of this crap. No, acceptance is, I feel fear, and you know what? I don't need to tell anybody about it. I don't need to ask, although sometimes it is good to ask for help. I can just feel it and accept it myself. You allow the energy to be exactly what it is. That's how you learn how to love yourself. You accept who you encounter when you become conscious of what you're encountering.
I'd like to, if we can, break down some of the steps in that pattern.
Sure.
Because they're all different relational moments. And they
Yeah.
all feel critical and challenging in their own ways. Like one of them is that very first meeting. How do we handle showing up for, let's say, a first date as an example? If part of what's going on in us is that desperate need to be loved and not come across as desperate, not below a chance in a relationship, because we're caught up in these patterns that feel really strong. And I'll tell you why I went here. I went here because you say that it worked out for Jen and I for some very real reasons, and I believe that. But also the truth is, and I know I've told you this before, we met when we were teenagers. 2 seconds before Jen, every young woman that I chased, I did some sort of wackadoodle pattern that was never going to work. Like one of them was connecting their disdain to my attraction. The more they didn't want me and showed it, the more they must be the one. And I desperately sought women who really weren't liking me. And of course, the more I desperately sought them, the more radically they didn't want me, which fed me perfectly in this stuck pattern.
Many people are caught in this pattern.
Yeah, so that's
they
why
get attracted to people who are rejecting them.
That's why I want to circle back on this, because we're in deep, important territory, and yet if I imagine I'm in any one of these phases, I go, yeah, nice theory, guys, help me.
Well, let's look at that one.
Yeah.
Let's take the example of someone who at any age recognized that they're desperate. And maybe they've even gone so far as, boy, when I go out on that first date, that desperation doesn't help me. For example, the women I'm attracted to or the men I'm attracted to, they don't like the desperation. It sort of turns them off.
Yeah.
Well, to become that conscious that desperation is a problem, that's you arrive at the starting gate. If you can become that aware of that desperation, that will help you. Then you take the next step. And this is work it's better to do on your own, or you can do it in the moment, on the fly. And you say, boy, I've got desperation, and it's interfering with every new date that I go on. Well, let's deal with what's going on. So in therapy, or with a friend, or on your own, you try and conjure up that feeling of desperation. Let me remember what it was on last night's date where I got desperate and I blew the evening. And you try and remember, you use your imagination to take your memory to take yourself into the experience of desperation. If you do a good job of it, you're going to go, when I feel desperation, what was I actually feeling? Fear, shame. I felt like there was something wrong with me, so I thought they couldn't possibly like me because I know there's something wrong with me. Let's just deal with fear and shame. You've made it to the bottom. Desperation's a general pointer term, but when you get down to fear or shame, like there's something wrong with me and then I'll never be able to hide that, so I'm going to try and be phoning myself up to where I become acceptable, you've arrived. You hit the driving emotional illness. Not emotional illness, it's emotional part of you that wants attention, wants love. You are seeking the love from the relationship, but what you learn to do is provide what that shame and what that emptiness and what that fear was calling for. It was calling for love. But the only love that works is the love that you bring to it. So I'm taking you back to the exact day-to-day practice. You sit there and you go, okay, truth is, I'm feeling shame. Something's wrong with me. I'm feeling fear. What do? I accept it. You stay conscious of it and you feel it. I feel the shame. I feel the fear. And these are strong feelings, so this is not something it's nice to demonstrate on camera, but it's even more poignant when I'm actually guiding somebody in a process, when they're actually connected with the shame, they're actually feeling the shame, they're actually feeling the fear. And all I do, once someone that I'm working with actually feels the fear, actually feels the shame, I get quiet. I say, let's stay with it. You just keep feeling the shame and fear. This is part of ourselves that are hurting. This is one of the things we're trying to heal in the course of this lifetime, because I know once they start feeling it, if I help them stay there means they just keep feeling it and stay conscious of it. I know exactly what's going to happen. It's going to melt. And in a little while, I'm going to see this. Some version of that, a sigh. And I know the next thing has happened. And I'll say, now what do you feel? And they'll say, well, I feel a little relief. And I said, do you mean to tell me that you were feeling deep shame and fear and now you feel a little relief? They say, yeah. And they're a little surprised because they knew how intense that fear and that shame felt. And it scared them. And what did I do? It's a practice called unconditional love. The tool they're bringing to their own fear and their own shame is acceptance. They're recognizing what they're feeling it, and they're allowing it to be the exact energy that it is. I didn't say go heal that or come back next week when you've healed that. I said just stay with it. And it works every time.
I love what you're saying. And I'm on my own little track here,
Sure,
so
yeah.
I just want to go there if you don't mind. And it's yet it's another slightly unusual leap, but it's pertinent, makes sense to me. My older daughter was preparing to go off to college, and she had to go in for filling out forms that talked about who she was and go to these interviews. And as we tried to prepare her for what could she say or do on these things that would increase her odds of success at getting accepted into these very high-end schools, it boiled down to 4 terms for me. I went, wow, getting here, it takes everything you've just done. But I know I'm in the moment, and I know I've got my best chance on a date or a job interview or a college application if I can be confident but not arrogant, humble but not self-deprecating.
So these are very important, crucial life skills.
Yeah.
And let's break those down, because they all come down to pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
How do you feel competent?
Right.
You basically trust yourself, and you can also trust yourself when you're scared. You know that it's okay to be scared, but you basically like yourself and trust yourself. And it's when someone is growing up in a very loving environment, they're still going to have these insecurities, but they're much more likely to lean in that direction naturally. What was the next? You were competent?
Confident, but not arrogant.
Arrogant? Arrogant is you're not living the truth, you're not being the truth. You think in some way that to cover up your inadequacy, you need to be important. You need to be, you need to fake it because you're really covering up your own insecurities. That's what arrogance is a lot about. You don't believe you're enough, so you try and pretend you're enough. Well, how are you going to antidote that?
Yeah.
You're going to heal it over time. You're going to recognize that part of you is confident and part of you is afraid, and you're going to accept it all. You're not going to have to cover it up. You're going into an interview and all of a sudden you feel afraid. And you go, I can't come off afraid. You don't have to come off afraid. And I don't want to do the opposite of be arrogant. They're not going to like that. People smell phony behavior all the time.
Yeah.
All you have to do is accept what's actually going on in yourself. You're accepting yourself. You won't swing to arrogance. You'll be so awake about what's going on in yourself, you won't unconsciously drift off into arrogance to hide the feeling that you want to hide, which is I feel incompetent in this moment, so I'm going to pretend I'm super together person. Competence and not arrogant.
Yeah. Humble, but not self-deprecating.
What's self-deprecating about? It's the verbal and emotional action of saying there's something wrong with me, I'm no good, and I'm going to show the truth. You go to the interview as, I know that I'm scared a lot of the time and that I'm not all that I'm cracked up to be. Yeah, it's a great thing to display at a college interview, right? Well, how do you not get self-deprecating?
Yeah. And yet be humble.
The medicine is the same. The cure is the truth. You tell yourself the truth about what's really going on in yourself. The truth will set you free. And some of the times when you're telling yourself the truth, you go, look at this. I do feel inadequate. I do feel scared. But no one else needs to know that. You're the only one who needs to know that. And what you can do is, if you can feel the fear, accept the fear, you're not going to feel crazily inclined to start yakking away about, I'm in this interview and I want to tell the truth, and really I'm terrified being in this interview, because they don't want to hear that. Nobody does. Nobody needs to. They don't want to have to help somebody there in the moment.
And we're talking about an interview because these things are universally important. This is also, back to the subject we're on, that first date, those initial...
Yeah, dates are interviews too.
Yeah.
Right. So what do we like in other people? We like their real self.
Yeah.
We like them to be comfortable in their own skin. We don't want any phony, I'm really terrific because I really am terrific, because, you know, I can't even go there and fake it.
Right.
We like real people. People are most beautiful when they are themselves. Well, everyone accepts the part of themselves that are fun and competent, etc. The part we don't accept and we don't want to reveal is the part of us that is scared, empty, lonely. So but if you tell yourself the truth about this, look at this. I'm sitting at this dinner date, first date with someone I'm attracted to, and I'm feeling scared. Fine. It's okay that I'm scared. Why not? I like this person. This matters to me. I want this to go well. So you encompass the whole of who you are. You become the real person you are. You don't have to reveal it. Sometimes you do, but sometimes that moment of honesty is very precious. It's an icebreaker. But you do have to reveal it to yourself. You can be sitting at that dinner table and go, I'm scared, and you know what? I have experience with this. I know what to do when I'm scared. I just breathe and feel and allow it to be the part of the whole person that I am, because it is. That's how you become a whole person. That's how you become a real person. You are the big tent. You accept all parts of yourself, the parts that are fun, funny, that are likes to joke with people and has certain strengths that you know about, and the parts of you that are scared and lonely and desperate, whatever it is, and angry. If you tell yourself the truth about it, and by telling the truth about it, I mean you let yourself feel it and allow that energy to be what it is in yourself, then you have total control over that energy. You're not going to leak it out. You're not going to say something stupid because you don't want to own your own angry, so you say, well, I didn't like how you were with that waitress, you know, or whatever. No, when you're encompassing, when you're responsible, this is what personal responsibility is, partially. I recognize what's going on in myself, and I'm the safe space for the whole being that I am. I hate to make it sound like it's over simple. There's other aspects to this, including long-term healing aspects. But at the same time, this particular practice of recognizing what the truth for you is in any given moment and allowing yourself to be exactly who you are in that moment and accept it. You're the big tent. You accept all of yourself. That is the doorway to so much. For one thing, you won't make mistakes out of there if you're in the truth.
There's a fascinating other piece to me that, like, we're never going to find, nor should
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I can say one more thing about that.
Sure.
Once you develop self-acceptance, you're far more forgiving with the people you're with. You're not sitting on that first date and it's going really well, and then the person really reveals some weakness or inadequacy. You're not going to slam your napkin down and say, I'm done, and run away. Because you have space for people's imperfections, because you have acceptance of your own. You can have room for their face to look scared, for their space, for them to get self-focused for a minute.
I was going to say almost the exact same thing, but it flipped. And it's that one of the things I've decided for myself is that to seek perfection in any other human is a ridiculous endeavor. But I do put as an important ingredient for the people that I want to let into deep intimacy that they've got a commitment to finding out who they are, to self-work, right? So one thing that the kind of reaction that you're having on that date, if I were dating you, Dad, I'll think to say.
I'm your dad.
Yeah, a little would be, my trust level would be going up for you, right? What am I seeking? I'm seeking people who are capable and interested in working on themselves even in challenging moments. So let's say the date isn't going perfect, and the woman I'm dating, just to be a little less weird, is having a reaction that's less than perfect. She's waving in and out. But what I'm seeing in her is someone who's working on it, in just the ways you described, nothing bigger than that. She's not leaping out at the waitress or trying to cover up for it, or if she's having an arrogant moment, I can even see the flip side where she's understanding in herself that she's done it. This is the body language of a person who cares to work on herself. And ultimately, to me, that's a highly attractive quality. To care, to want to be a changing.
Not only highly attractive,
yeah,
I say it is the most important and essential and imperative quality that anyone who's you're considering for an intimate relationship must have. They don't have to be perfect. None of us are. You're not going to find it. But if you, for example, if you're sitting at a first date and you're sitting there and the person's telling you a lot about themselves, and you notice they keep on talking and talking, and one moment you go, okay, I got to say something here. I'm getting more and more uncomfortable. And you say to the person that you're out on the date with, you know, I really have been interested in coming on this date with you, but what I've noticed when we're actually sitting at the table is you just are nonstop telling me yourself about myself. You're not for one moment asking me, what do you think about that? You're just telling me about yourself, and I can't even get a word in edgewise. Oh, you're flushing out into the open something, you're being honest, and there's two types of responses that are possible in that moment. The person can say, well, aren't you picky? I'm just trying to tell you about my life. Oh God, you people are just so judgmental and picky, and what do you want? That's response number one. Here's response number two. Wow. You know, I'm really uncomfortable that you're saying that, and you know what? The reason I'm uncomfortable is it's true. And I thank you so much for speaking up. And I'm so embarrassed. I could give you a lame excuse like I was just so excited about being with you, but you've named what the problem is. I wasn't being conscious and sensitive to you. Thank you so much for your honesty. I do care about. Well, that's what I'm giving you an example of something you're asking for. You don't need the person to be perfect, but you need them to be interested in improving their own self and open to communication. Oh my, those kind of things do build trust. They do build intimacy. And most crucial of all, is there an absolute imperative for a relationship? Without it, if you can't communicate those kind of things, I'm not saying in a harsh or judgmental way, I'm saying in a kind way, the relationship will deteriorate over time. Because we are able to see the imperfections and the problems in the people we're up close and personal to, even some that they can't even see in their own self. We don't know what we don't know. So imperative in an intimate, trusting business relationship, family relationship, spousal relationship, of any gender whatsoever, friendship relationship, we have to be able to communicate in a kind way what we're uncomfortable about in another person. And the mark and measure of what's going to make that relationship get bigger and better or deteriorate is the willingness of that individual to care about their own personal growth and the strength they have to let in something that might be uncomfortable for them, and the strength that they have to be honest about it and say thank you.
And of course, to flip that one around, our willingness to be that person as well more so than the one who has to communicate everything wrong with that other person.
Exactly.
The willingness to own our own stuff first and foremost.
That's right. So we don't get rough.
Yeah.
So we're not judging them because we love to look at their fear, but we don't want to get near our own. Boy, topics galore. I mean, this is really big stuff at the heart and soul of relationships.
And I'm looking at the clock and I realize there's one more I really want to go over,
Yes,
because I thought our list was pretty fascinating there. And that would be the fall out of love phase of relationship.
Yeah.
We both, you and I, learned a very long time ago this term that it's always stuck with me because I found it interesting. Right or wrong, I don't know, but I found it interesting, and it was the term limerence.
Yeah.
And this was defining that initial phase in a relationship, the one you already mentioned, where everything is heightened.
Yeah.
And everything is magical.
Yeah.
And that person is amazing.
Yeah.
And that phase of relationship, has a varying length, but it tends to be about a 6-month length.
Yeah.
Where you get 6 months of limerence.
Yeah. Where you see the beauty in someone.
Yeah.
And you're not paying attention to the weaknesses. And the both of you are in such a heightened state that you don't see a lot of the weaknesses right away.
And they're not emerging right away. Love is such a strong force. Whether you're faking it or not, you're in a heightened state. And
of course.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Then the question is, how do you deal with an experience of, gee, what happened to the sparkle? How do we lose that? And a lot of people just feel hopeless around it. They just think, well, that's the way love is. And it isn't at all. That has nothing to do with love. That has to do with the various ways that we can injure love, injure relationship. Like, to break out a list that a mentor taught me and thousands of other people is, and it brings it back to what you were saying earlier, is love actually is actions we take to produce an experience called love. So an action that we can take to enhance love or nurture love is being trustworthy. And you ask anybody who's had a partner have a second relationship about what lack of being trustworthy does to them. It's devastating. Some people never are able to get over that. That's an extreme example. We're trustworthy. And if we're trustworthy, we produce an action that relates to love. That we actively are there to reduce the fear of our partner. Oh, our partner has fear. Yeah, no S, Sherlock. We all have fear. So one of the actions that is love, it's an action we take to produce love, is we're actively trying to reduce the fear of one's partner. That builds love. We're not in there judging them, going, do you know that you just slipped? Do you know that you were a little rude to that waiter over there? And I don't like that kind of crap. That's not kindness. That's not increasing the safety of one's partner. Another action might be, in place of that would be, hey honey, do you know that you were a little rude to that waitress? You must be upset. Is there any way we can talk about what happened there? And maybe I could help you with it. It's a different attitude. It's an attitude of acceptance. Or maybe you don't talk at a dinner table. You're helping reduce the fear of one's partner. You're helping to increase the security of your partner. You're caring. You're spacious in the moment of their duress. And there's a list of these. You're intimate. You know what intimacy is. But my point is this: how does love that was sparkling diminish? There's always reasons. If someone took a video of those first year of any relationship and we edited out all the beautiful stuff, just press a button, all the beautiful stuff disappears. There'd be a lot of events that anyone could identify. Look what I did there. I wasn't sensitive.
I'd add another one to this. I think limerence is a phase that does exist and ends of its own accord. It's kind of like my guy and his bicycle, or someone who buys a Ferrari. Yeah. You do get a little bitty phase with that bicycle where it is deeply fulfilling. Yes. But it's not a long-term thing, and it shouldn't be. And I look at, if I ask myself, what are the pillars of my 30-year relationship with my wife? It certainly isn't that whole fulfilling phase where it kind of works. Probably not perfectly, but it kind of works for a little while. What is sustainable, it feels legitimate and long term, are very basic things like friendship. I like my wife. She's a good friend. So much of life is just dishes and errands and planning for kids' college and trying to get enough sleep, and my neck hurts and I need a rub. They're basic things. And those things are pleasurable with someone who is your friend and you like being around them.
And you trust them.
And you trust them. And
And
love
you're able to
comes from...
see the beauty of the little things.
Yeah.
You're able to appreciate, look at that, she just rubbed my neck. Look at that, I came home from work and she had dinner on the table. This is in the realm of miracle. Someone made dinner for me.
And sustain long-term love
Yeah.
with built intimacy over time, to me, for how I'm hardwired, is even more special than that supercharged beginning phase. That's fun, it's exciting, it's like a roller coaster or jumping out of an airplane. It has a thrill to it. But what's a long-term sustainable? It's a different kind of thing, and the pleasure is going to come from a different place. At least it did in my heart, and it's the things I said: play, trust, intimacy, hard work,
Honesty,
honesty,
caring, sensitivity, kindness, the very things that we aspire to be and hopefully grow in our own self over the course of our lifetime.
Yeah. We have spent another 46 minutes. It is time to wrap up this week. We will be back next Thursday, both at 1 Eastern Standard, and for this segment at 2. So hopefully you're still watching, and hopefully this has been valuable for you. And may we see you next week.